much, Dr. Greenway. So my name's Sarah Tregenza and I currently serve on the board for Asca and as a scientific advisor. And we're now going to move into a panel session. So Dr. Greenway will be serving on our panel, so I'll invite her to take a seat wherever you like. Thank you very much. And I'm going to now invite up the 5 other panel members we have on our agenda. So, Miss Claire Dowsing, Associate Professor Nairi Elwood, Mr. Peter Leos, Mr. Robin Visacodetti, and Preston Mustafa. So in the interest of time, how we're going to let this run, we want to give each of the panel members an opportunity to introduce themselves for those who haven't spoken yet. And then we'd also like to open up the floor to any questions the audience members have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a brief 10 minutes or less, if we can accomplish that, for each of the panel members to give a brief introduction of themselves in terms of how they're linked to sickle cell disease. So I'll hand it over to Robin first, if you'd like to introduce yourself. Thank you.
Sorry, Dr. Sarah, it's early in the morning. So good morning, everyone. It won't take 10 minutes, it might take a minute for me. I'm Robin, I have thalassemia minor. My wife, Georgia, she's got sickle thalassemia, and I have a daughter who's got thal major. My daughter gets transfused regularly, whereas my wife cannot be transfused at all because she's got a complication in sickle cell or sickle thalassemia. So that's a complicated situation as it is. But today it's given me good hope. Congratulations, Agnes, on Mapalo's awesome recovery. That's fantastic stuff. So it's giving me a hope into the future. So groups like these really help me. So I try to associate myself with any of the groups out there. So yeah, I work 9 to 5, regular worker. But I try to keep myself abreast with anything that goes on because it is a long road for anyone with one of these conditions, thalassemia or sickle cell, and it takes time, it takes effort to go through it, and thank you.
Thanks very much, Robin. And now I'm going to pass on to Preston, who's the co-founder of ASA.
Morning, everybody. My name is Preston Mustafa, husband to Agnes, and I'm thrilled to have all you people here. It's not to have people coming to support us in this cause. And congratulations with that for doing it. It's been amazing. Thank you for all the hard work while I'm away, and yeah, it's been amazing. Thank you, everybody. Cheers.
Hi, I'm Nairi Elwood. I'm the director of the Cord Blood Bank here at the Children's Hospital. So our cord blood bank is one of 3 public cord blood banks in Australia, the others being in Sydney and Queensland. And we're government funded to collect cord blood from mums who altruistically donate their cord blood to the bank. We employ our own midwives who are specially trained to recruit mums and do all the paperwork and the family history, collect the cord blood, and then it is brought here in Melbourne to our processing laboratory where it's processed and stored, and is then, it undergoes a lot of testing and is then available for anyone around the world who needs a bone marrow transplant for all sorts of illnesses, in particular leukemia, but other blood disorders. So within the 3 AusCord cord blood banks, we have 38,000 cord blood units in our registry, and we have released just on 1,300 cord blood units for patients in Australia and around the world. And I did do a bit of a look back before today's fabulous launch. And so far we have not released any cord blood units for cord blood transplants for sickle cell disease. And then following up with the Australian Bone Marrow Transplant Recipient Registry, they have actually released 4 bone marrow, or undergone 4 bone marrow transplants and all of those have been in sibling donors, where the best results, as you've already heard, the best outcome at the moment for patients undergoing bone marrow transplant for sickle cell disease is with sibling donors. But I guess one of the other things that we do, and increasingly we're seeing more African donors come into one of our collection sites here in Melbourne. And one of the great things we do is we actually do test for hemoglobinopathy testing for every cord blood donor or every baby that comes into our bank. And occasionally we do pick up abnormalities that way, which I think in lieu of regular screening, that's quite a valuable service that we provide to. Unfortunately, we can't collect from every hospital around Melbourne due to our government funding model and infrastructure. But hopefully that gives you a little bit of an insight into what we do have here in Australia and is serving a valuable purpose. So, thanks.
Hi, my name's Claire Dowsing. I'm a registered nurse at the Royal Melbourne Hospital. I'd just like to thank Agnes for inviting me to participate in this momentous occasion, and so good to see so many people attending, so well done everyone. My background is in haematology and blood transfusion, and I came over to Australia from New Zealand in 2002 to run the apheresis unit at the Royal Melbourne Hospital and what was a fledgling red cell exchange program at that time. I don't know if you noticed, but on the map that Anthea showed, New Zealand didn't even feature. So that was my first introduction to patients with sickle cell disease. At that time we had 5 patients on red cell exchange, and we now have over 30 patients who attend regularly for blood transfusion, which is made possible through blood donors and through the Australian Red Cross Blood Service. This has been a really fantastic treatment option. It isn't curative, but it does help to ameliorate the adverse effects that can occur with sickle cell and often occur with sickle cell disease. So with that said, I'm going to pass over to my dear friend Peter to talk about his experience.
Thanks, Claire. Good morning, everyone. I might just take a tad more time to read through this. My name's Peter Leos. I was born on the 13th of May 1960 in Melbourne, Australia here, to Greek immigrant parents. I studied at Monash University, got a Bachelor of Economics and a Diploma in Education at the University of Melbourne, and I became a school teacher. I've been teaching full-time since 1983 and at Laidlaw Secondary College since 1984. I was diagnosed with sickle cell anemia in 1963 when I was 3 years old. My first awareness of sickle cell pain was pain in the joints of my fingers as a 3-year-old. This developed into more severe joint pain as I got older and became a teenager, usually in the arms or legs, and in later years in the lower back. For 50 years, the standard treatment was pain relief, blood transfusions, and staying hydrated. The symptoms of sickle cell pain and the anemia were treated in this way, but there was no preventative treatment at the time, other than avoiding dehydration, overexertion, or infections, which were the triggers of a crisis. But then often you had a painful crisis for no apparent reason. I had weekly or fortnightly appointments at the haematology clinic at the Royal Children's Hospital, the old building, where a blood test and my haemoglobin level would determine if I went home after the appointment or whether I was admitted to the hospital for a transfusion. I dreaded those appointments. Here I was looked after by great haematologists like Dr. John Colbatch, Dr. Henry Eckert, to name a few. The Royal Children's Hospital was a site of a lot of pain and loneliness for me, and yet at the same time I have very fond memories of this place. In 1978, when I was 18, I was transferred across to the Royal Melbourne Hospital and was looked after by Dr. John Sullivan. At first this was done at the hospital, and then I saw Dr. John Sullivan privately until he passed away in 2010. During this time I became dependent on the painkillers that were required to relieve my pain. Throughout this period at the Royal Children's Hospital and the Royal Melbourne Hospital, there were other patients with thalassemia and leukemia, but never anyone with sickle cell anemia. I didn't have the opportunity to talk to anyone who had sickle cell anemia until much later in life. Sickle cell anemia was a rare condition in Melbourne few people in the 60s and the 70s had the knowledge or the experience in Melbourne to treat sickle cell anemia or even to effectively manage chronic pain. In 2011, I was referred to Dr. Annabelle Tuckfield and began apheresis treatment, the red cell exchange treatment. This treatment for me was life-changing. I've not had a sickle cell crisis since December 2010. As a result of this, I was weaned off the pain medication throughout the latter part of 2011, and by January 2012 was no longer dependent on this medication. The apheresis treatment freed me from the many limitations that my condition had imposed upon me. I've been able to continue working as a school teacher, this year celebrating my 35th year at the same school and 36 years teaching overall. I've been able to travel to Europe twice in the last few years and able to enjoy being in the water at the beach or at a swimming pool for the first time since 1977 without the temperature change resulting in severe sickle cell bone pain. A few years ago while at work at Laylaw Secondary College, I met a student who had sickle cell anemia. And for the first time in my life, I was able to share some of my experiences with someone who knows what it feels like. At 53, that was my first time, or the first time that I spoke to another person, another sufferer of sickle cell anemia. She has since graduated from high school, got married, and is benefiting from the apheresis treatment with Claire, like I am. And in closing, I just wanted to say one more thing. One of the most important things that I wanted growing up and didn't have was information. Information is hope. Information about the disease, what's likely to happen in the future, will I be able to hold down a job or a long-term relationship or have kids? These were the sort of questions that I thought about, and I wish I could tell my 15-year-old self that things are going to be okay. I wanted information from doctors who had actually looked after patients like me, and information from patients who were walking the same path as I was and could share their experiences. This sickle cell advocacy group and the work that Agnes has done provides that sort of information that was lacking when I was growing up. So of course this group has my wholehearted support, and I hope it has yours. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Peter, and thank you to all the panel members we have here.